Hey guys, how's it going? Sorry if the radio in the background is kind of annoying. I'm just sitting outside in this winter wonderland. Let me show you. Lots of snow. And today I just wanted to do a little bit of resin outside. It's been a while since I've gotten to do some crystals, so I'm going to use up the rest of the resin that I have right now and include a lot of semi-precious stones that I got for Christmas and just new materials that I'm really excited to try out. I think these are going to be sparkling and glamorous. Hopefully I don't mess anything up because I feel like it has been a little minute since I've done this. It's a pretty mild day today, so I can do this right now in the morning. Let's see what we can create. So first, getting out some of the materials that I plan to use and have everything in arm's reach before I pour any resin. I get out all the gemstones and wire and fibers and metals and organic materials that I want to use for this project. And as always, it took me a very long time to even get into the can of resin. It solidified so hard. This is always the hardest part. It makes it so difficult to just start. I don't understand this metal cap situation. It just doesn't do it for me. But once the resin is finally open and I'm sufficiently stressed out, I take a few calming breaths and let myself get back into the moment because we're going to be making some orgonite today, and that's something very anti-stress. It's not the point. Remember that this is a beautiful winter wonderland. It's literally snowing around me at this point. I just plan to get started by wrapping the quartz crystals and choosing which gems I want to put in the first layer of the piece. I chose an assortment of rose and crystal quartz and wrapped them with copper wire clockwise with my dominant hand, and to secure them inside the piece, I wrapped the other end of the wire around toothpicks so it would be going through the entire piece, connecting with all the other layers of the crystal. It's kind of confusing here because I'm working with so many crystals and materials as crystals, but then also my molds are crystals. This is a very meta problem, but I am talking about the molds themselves. You want the wire to go throughout it because the next few layers of this piece are going to be organic and inorganic materials interchangeably using steel fibers, copper fibers, and I have a bunch of different other semi-precious stones to pick from. I was really loving the look of this pink wire wrapped around the crystals. Just the entire process of spiraling these minerals is so calming and so fun for me. Sometimes I forget how much I enjoy it, so I loved revisiting this type of project and using a few upgraded materials since the last time. So I got out some green sea glass and wrapped that with some wire as well. Broke up a little bit of mica that I found one time along a road cut just somewhere along the highway, and I crumpled that up to drop in the resin as well. So once I had situated all the materials that I had planned for the first layer of all these pieces, I could mix the catalyst into the resin and start stirring. Since I was working outside, it was kind of cold and stirring really thick, so I stirred it for an extra long time and made sure that the layers that I was going to do weren't going to be too big for any bubbles to get caught up in there. I would definitely move these pieces inside while they're curing, so hopefully that warmth later will deal with any of the stray air bubbles. But for this first layer, I'm just dipping in all of the materials that we've set in our molds so far. So among that, I put some acorns and some pine cones and a few other random gemstones as well. Once I've used up all the resin, I use a little bit of gold leaf to position around the crystals. I don't want to obscure anything in that first layer, but I just want the gold leaf to surround it and create some dimension within the resin. I get out my mason jar of flowers to add some more decorative elements, picking out some pink and purple and red flowers and a few leaves to sprinkle into the molds. Every time I pull out these molds, I like to try something a little bit different. In this one, I had one of these decorative glass pebbles that I picked up at the dollar store one time and decided to throw that into the bottom of the shot glass. I really love the color of it. It's such a bright blue, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to add any minerals to the very first layer, but I did decide to use some Rose Quartz just because it's so pretty. I figured this would all sink right to the bottom because none of the resin had cured yet, but I love Rose Quartz. I love the meaning and the property it has, and it looks beautiful too. And here's a little zoom out shot of my working situation before I move these crystals inside while the first layer of resin hardens. After a few hours of curing later that day, I could add the next layers of inorganic and organic material. I select some of these copper and steel shells, along with some of the shavings and fibers that I have. I've collected all this stuff just randomly over time. Friends, family have donated to the cause. Some of these shavings are really cool. They have like this spirally texture, and I'm always on the lookout for really nice inorganic materials. Finding beautiful organic materials is never my issue, but I do love how shiny the inorganic materials can be sometimes. So just after that first layer of fibers, I throw in some semi-precious gemstones that I had, and whenever I think it's appropriate, I throw in some gold leaf to the composition as well. The first layer is cured, you can just snip those toothpicks off or slide them out because they just get in the way from doing the next layers. So I get out my pliers and snip those off and curl them down and make sure they're not protruding the mold, because I've done that before and I had to sand them down afterwards and it's just an unnecessary mistake. So I make sure those are all below resin level and work on the next layer. For this project, I didn't go too crazy with the gemstones. I stuck to just a few that I really know, like crystal quartz, sodalite, and rose quartz. I did throw in kind of an assortment at one point, but these three minerals were the main ones that I used. Because they're often used together, they're very harmonious. Sodalite is one of the chakra minerals, which is really nice for the third eye chakra, where the rose and crystal quartz represent trust and harmony and admiration and all this positive stuff. So I was trying to focus on the meaning of these crystals while I was working on the project and while I was working on each individual layer. So I mix up the resin for the final layer of these orgonite pieces. I fill them to the very brim, and I'm really careful with all the copper and aluminum shells because they're really good at catching air bubbles, so I just make sure to tap those out and make sure those don't appear halfway through curing. While I finish these pieces up, I just add whatever I think will make it look really cute. So some petals, some leaves in there, just a touch more sprinkle of minerals. It's good to check on the pieces periodically within the first little while that you pour them, just to make sure no surprise air bubbles pop up and really ruin the party. But it is really important to be in the right state of mind while working on orgonite. It's a very intention-based process for an intention-based material that you're creating. These pieces represent mindfulness because that's what I was focusing on when I was creating them. I was listening to really soothing music and wasn't getting distracted for all the moments that I was building onto this creation. I have to admit that I did kind of let that go for the unmolding process, because sometimes, depending on the mold that you use, it can be very difficult to get these out of their mold. So I try to work it pretty slowly and just stretch the mold off the piece, but sometimes it's really stuck on there and takes quite a while, and I would call this quite a workout for my arms. It's also due to the resin that I use for this project too. As you saw earlier, it was casting craft polyester resin, and that type of resin I found doesn't cure fully on some of these molds until I take it out. So once I take it out, I let it sit for an additional few hours, soak up some sunshine, and cure fully before I can really take a look at them and enjoy them for what they are. I'm often nervous to call these pieces orgonite because I'm not sure if it's the perfect scientific calculation of what that is, but I do love the idea behind it, and I do love the ritual and the meaning, and then the product that you have afterwards, the reward that stays with you of this, combining the beauty of inorganic and organic materials and how they can work together and how they're meant to work together. It just really resonates with me to create pieces like this. And just by doing this one project, I'm inspired to do more. I've actually been really curious to do a half sphere orgonite piece, but these crystals are definitely my favorite. So it's been just about long enough, but these crystals have finally cured enough to be handled slightly. I'm gonna let them sit for another couple days before I fully set them out, but they're definitely fun to inspect up close. I'm seeing a lot of those different colored gemstones just sprinkled out throughout it. I see the Sodalite. So this crystal right here is Rose Quartz that's coiled in there. There's a cute little acorn near the top of this one, which is really adorable, and a bunch of gold leaf throughout it, which I think gave it a really nice dimension. I love that. And then you can see the steel and copper throughout it. And the more I look, the more I see. There's a few leaves in there too. I really like how the fragmented sides bend the crystal within it, so it's really interesting to look at. This one might be my favorite, but let me look at the other ones a little bit too. This one looks a lot simpler. This one's a lot more fresh, a lot more spring-like, I think, because it has the red and the purple and the fern right at the top near the crystal. So that's a really fun, colorful focus. And then the bottom, I also put some pink petals too, which look really good. The texture on this side is a little bit matte, but I don't know why that happened. It might be because my molds are getting a little bit old. I do have a set of these from a really long time. This one's really interesting. I do like the varying sizes of all the metal shavings in there. Okay, so I take back that the other one was my favorite, because this one, even though the quartz in there is kind of small, there's so much stuff going on, and it's not too busy. It's just very cool looking. I like looking at each fragment of crystal as a little window and just see what type of different compositions we have in there. But I do see a bunch of rose quartz, the little sprinkle of rose quartz that I was doing. That looks really awesome. There's some of those white flowers in there that you can kind of see that I remember picking this summer. This one has that pine cone right at the top too, so that's really cool. And the gold leaf throughout it. I was really excited to see how that gold leaf was going to cling on to the pine cone, and I think it turned out really cool. I like how both of the spiral, both of the ends, the pine cone and the quartz are kind of converging, just pointing at the exact same spot. This one's very cool. More of a neutral color palette, not so sparkly, but still really, really pretty. And then for fun, I decided to add on this shot glass little cup, candle holder, whatever you want to call it. There's a little baby pine cone right there. I think my favorite part about it. And then some mica around the top. So that's just some mica that I found. There's a quartz wrapped in pink wire. I think there's a sprinkle of lavender because you can see that purple on the bottom. And then there's some sodalite, all those different gemstones that we threw in there. along with the steel and copper and gold leaf. And for fun, I decided to throw in this little blue glass pebble. I think that tints it really cool and just like spaces things out in an interesting ways. This one just has a lot of dimension. And then there's some sea glass wrapped in coiled there. And I think this one has a really good even balance, which I was kind of nervous about because whenever I use mica, it's very dark, very strong. I don't think there was too much, and there's just so much beautiful stuff going on in the rest of it. So I'm happy. I'm super happy. So I'm gonna let them cure for a little bit longer before I do anything with it, like list it or put them around my place or give them as gifts, you know, whatever. But I'm really happy with how they turned out now, and they're just best to be left by the window in the sunshine for a while. Soak up that good energy. Wow, I'm noticing more and more pretty stuff as I look at them. For the rose quartz one, there's a bunch of little pieces of rose quartz that floated right to the bottom while I was curing. Transparent and flaky and kind of looks like petals falling off of this main rose crystal. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm going off, but it's so cool to me. Sometimes in my other videos, I like giving a top coat to things. I think that generally does make them shinier. These ones turned out really good. They definitely could use a little bit of touch-ups with resin, but I'm not going to worry too much about it, and I'm just going to let them sit for a little while. If I ever want to make those changes, I can, but there's no rush. And the more I look at these, obviously the more imperfections I'm noticing as well. Right here, there's obviously an air bubble because one of the caps is kind of protruding. Sometimes that happens. Well, I'm definitely pleased and I can't wait to work on my next resin project. Okay, so thanks for watching and see you on the next one.